Yasuke is a big heavy brute of a samurai, while Naoe is a small stealthy assassin. But who should you play in Assassin's Creed Shadows? What's the difference between their skills, their weapons, and their playstyle? I've got all the answers for you today. Let's go! We'll start with Yasuke, and do let me know in the comments who you're playing as. Now, as a charismatic samurai, Yasuke strikes your foes with brutal precision and power. Use his combat-orientated skills to attack, block, parry, and defeat your enemies. So Yasuke's kit is definitely heavily combat-orientated. I think a way that you could think of it from an Assassin's Creed terms is think of his playstyle to be similar to a Valhalla in that more action-orientated, combat-orientated playstyle. It is definitely different, and we'll get into the details as why it is, but I think like connecting that to Valhalla's playstyle, and if you enjoyed with those vibes, you may actually connect with Yasuke. So in terms of his equipment, he has two range weapons, being the bow or the rifle. Now the bow being the stealthier of the two, with the rifle obviously making just a little bit more noise. He also has a long katana, so a traditional katana style katana from a samurai would have, a naginata, which is basically a polearm, and a konobo, which is the giant club type weapon that we do see him use. Now for Yasuke and Naoe as well, they will have a skill line for each of their main weapon types. So Yasuke has a skill line for each of these weapons. Now these will improve his capabilities of using the weapons. He'll learn new combos as well as unlocking deadly abilities. And when I got to play as Yasuke and Naoe in the preview, which is the footage that you're seeing here, I did have a poke around in those skills and having a little bit of a look to see what they actually are. And for the most part, there's a lot of those typical passive skills that you might expect, just increase your overall damage and efficiency. But there is some actual quality skills here. Like for example, in the long katana for Yasuke, you've got the sheathed attack that you can now become a posture attack by holding RB or right trigger. So while the sheathed attack isn't a new skill, it's adding additional effects on top of what already exists, adding that posture effect, which for Assassin's Creed Shadows, all enemies will have that yellow like posture bar. If you break that bar, you'll be able to follow up with critical hits, which would then turn that sheath ability into a fantastic way of being able to do that. Now, outside of these weapon skill lines, Yasuke also has a samurai line. The skills in this line are more about increasing Yasuke's effectiveness in combat, like increasing his HP, or adding new effects like the link attack, allowing him to swap weapons during a combo to transition into a quick attack while switching to your alternate weapon, extending your combo. So you can essentially switch between weapons like mid-combo, which I think is really cool to be able to use. But this is also where you get the brutal assassination, which is the way that Yasuke will do assassinations. Now, speaking of stealth with Yasuke, stealth here is vastly different to Naoe, and also pretty different to how you would typically expect it to be in an Assassin's Creed game. So essentially how Yasuke's stealth works is he doesn't have a hidden blade or a way to essentially, stealthily take out targets. There is that brutal assassination, which Yasuke does seem to yell before assassinating people, which will make noise, but also it doesn't have the finesse ability that Naoe has, where she can leap off rooftops and assassinate enemies as well. However, it's not all bad news for Yasuke. He does have access to the bow, which is a stealthy weapon, and Ubisoft have said this and provided footage of the stealth bow build for Yasuke in their progression blog that they did put out. So you will have the options to perform stealthy activities as Yasuke. It's just different to what you would typically expect as an assassin. It's a bit more of that brutish style. Speaking of, there is also the observe vision, which both Yasuke and Naoe have access to. Naoe has an additional vision mode that Yasuke doesn't have. Now the observe vision allows you to highlight things like loot, collectibles, and quest objectives and things when you're actually using that vision. Now there is another type of vision that only Naoe has access to. The observe vision allows you to highlight all of these things, but not see through walls, and we'll talk about Naoe's vision when we get to her section. Now I also did want to touch on some of the movement and the parkour with Yasuke, as it is quite different. So Yasuke being the size that he is and wearing the full samurai armor, he does move significantly slower than your typical assassin, and especially compared to Naoe. But this also means that his parkour is a lot slower in terms of the animations of his climbing, but he can't access certain areas that Naoe can as well, because Naoe has access to a grappling hook. So what this will mean is in general exploration and playing around with Yasuke, it's just something to note that the movement will be slower, your climbing will be slower, and you'll be most mostly like a ground operated character, whereas Naoe has access to the rooftops and the free flowing aspects of parkour. So if you like that more brutish, like slow moving playstyle, being able to slam yourself through walls and like absolutely destroy enemies with these bigger, more impactful weapons, then Yasuke is probably the option you want to pick. However, let's talk about Naoe. As the quick-witted and agile Naoe, use noise, light, shadows to evade detection as enemies respond to their changing surroundings. Distract guards using your kunai, your shurikens, and smoke bombs. Infiltrate enemy bases with your grappling hook and parkour skills, and assassinate your targets with the hidden blade. So we'll start with combat as we did with Yasuke. Now, for melee weapons, Naoe has the short katana, and the kusagami, and the tanto. For ranged options, you don't have access to like a bow or a rifle, anything like that. Here you've got the assassin tools. This is the kunai, the smoke bomb, the bell alarm, and the shuriken. Now, this is also reflected in Naoe's skill lines, the same as it was with Yasuke. You've got those same skill lines, except those assassin tools are just in a skill line called tools. And a difference with Naoe is that she has two of those more general skills that are more specific to just her overall kit and playstyle, being the shinobi and the assassin trees. The shinobi tree is more focused around Naoe's ability to remain undetected, being in stealth, using the grappling hook, giving access to things like the shallow water breathing, so Naoe can stay hidden underwater while still being able to breathe, or abilities like heightened senses. While undetected, time slows down around Naoe for 8 seconds and it does abort on enemy contact. The assassin line, conversely, as you might expect, is all about Naoe's ability to assassinate enemies, either increasing her effectiveness with those assassinations or adding additional effects like the double assassination that was recently shown in the progression blog from Ubisoft, allowing Naoe to assassinate 2 enemies as long as she is using the tanto. But the assassination attempts don't end there for Naoe. Now, those assassin's tools and the hidden blade are a core part of her kit as well. Now, the difference here with Naoe as well is that while she can have 2 main weapons equipped, the same that Yasuke has, these like ranged weapons, these assassination tools, are always equipped, right? These tools don't need to be equipped like, say, Yasuke's bow or rifle, where if you choose to have a bow equipped as Yasuke, you can only have 1 melee weapon equipped, whereas Naoe can have 2 of the 3 melee weapons equipped, and then she's always got those tools available in her toolkit as well. Speaking of those tools, we've got the smoke bomb, which is a classic assassin tool that creates a cloud of smoke, allowing you to escape or assassinate low-rank enemies without being seen. You've got the shinobi bells, a perfect tool to distract enemies. By throwing a bell, you can lure guards away from their post or create an opportunity to sneak past them. The kunai, as you would expect, are extremely sharp throwing knives that deal a lot of damage and can result in one-shot kills when aimed with precision. And the shurikens are sharp, star-shaped throwing weapons that momentarily stun enemies and are even more useful when thrown into the environment to cause distractions. On top of this, Naoe also has that eagle vision that we touched on earlier. So essentially the difference between observe and eagle vision, which Naoe has access to both, is that eagle vision allows Naoe to see through walls and be able to mark these things and see enemies through walls, whereas Yasuke's observe vision doesn't allow that fact. But Naoe does have access to both of these. Now, from a movement and a parkour perspective, it really is no coincidence that every video from the parkour blog that Ubisoft put out was all from Naoe's perspective. She's got the grappling hook, which allows her to climb up higher than Naoe because you can use that to access rooftops that you can't access just via parkouring. The general like parkour animations and smoothness of that is significantly better with Naoe, and also her general movement like around the world is way faster. Ubisoft have said this is the fastest moving assassin that they've ever made. So it is something to note that if you're doing exploration with Yasuke, there will be areas that he cannot access because he doesn't have access to that grappling hook that Naoe does. And that leads us into that next point, like who should you play? Now, we have been told that Naoe and Yasuke will have different relationships with NPCs, including romantically, and you won't be forced to play as a certain character once you have reached that point where they are working together. But it is something to think about as to which one that you'll probably play most of the time, because you will have to level up both of these characters individually in terms of their gear, not in terms of their skills and mastery, as they will level up concurrently. You'll just be able to pick different skill points because they have different skill trees. But deciding on which one that you want to play, I think, is dependent on your personal playstyle. I would like to know in the comments down below. Personally though, I do think that Naoe is the definitive best option for a couple of reasons. The first being parkour. She has those much faster animations and movement speed, and it feels much more like an Assassin's Creed game to play as the assassin shinobi character. Plus the grappling hook as well, like you can't go wrong with a good grappling hook. I also think that the access to assassin's tools and just having that in your kit is very valuable, plus the eagle vision. And then in terms of combat proficiency, while she is definitely a glass cannon, during my preview session playing as Naoe, I did die multiple times, and she will die very quickly if you do take damage. But assumedly, if you can level her up, get the right skills, also become more learned in this combat system. It's very hard to master a combat system in a preview session where you're playing it for a couple of hours, jumping into the game at the midway point. I feel like if you spend that time with Naoe, learning her different weapons, how they operate, you will still be effective in combat. But then conversely, there is probably moments when Yasuke will be very beneficial because of the fact that he has that combat prowess. Like if you get to encounters where you've got to take out 5, 6, 10 enemies, however that is, and there isn't really a way that you could do it in stealth, like it would definitely, personally, I think be easier just to brute force it with Yasuke, you know, because that's kind of his whole kit. But I am excited to play with both of these characters and figure out builds for them and what I like and don't like, and actually spend time with them both once we do have access to the full game. But do let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Which one of these two characters are you going to play as? Let me know down below. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Naoe, and I hope you have a great day.